day. My name is Don Green. I'm an attorney in California and Nevada. Many of you will know me from the gun shows here in Las Vegas area, and also from the programs on the American Guns and Glory Network, where we've done special broadcasts, and as a frequent guest on Bob Irwin's Fired Up, which is on the American Guns and Glory Network. I think it's every Friday or every Thursday, and possibly rebroadcast on Saturdays on the radio. And of course, you can find them on YouTube. Okay. Today, we want to talk about a number of things which are going on in the state of Nevada, and a number of issues which our legislators in Nevada in particular, because we're in a legislative session, someone is not getting the message. And it's either that the legislature is not doing its job, or they're doing a job because of big money. May we have the first slide, please? The big gun and the anti-gun lobby in the United States and Nevada is all about saving lives. Well, let's look at a statistic. Cigarette smoking and cancer. There are approximately 443,000 Americans die from tobacco-related illnesses, cancer, and heart disease each year. An estimated 49,000 of these people die as a result of secondhand smoke exposure, and those are statistics from October 8th of 2020. Now, they're talking about saving lives and, constitutional provisions. Well, look at this. We have a Nevada constitutional provision which allows us to keep and bear arms. We have Nevada statutes which allow us to keep and bear arms. And in fact, the background check law, which came into effect on January 1st, 2020, now 14 months ago, specifically states that we have the right to bear arms. But there is no constitutional statute no statute in Nevada, or no constitutional provision guaranteeing the right to smoke. Next slide, please. Now, car wrecks. Nobody likes car wrecks. We all hear about them every day. We're inundated with television commercials. But let's look at the statistics. 4.4 million people are injured seriously enough to require medical attention every year in the United States. Road crashes are the leading cause of death for people aged 1 to 54. Not guns, not gunfire. But yet the DMV in Nevada will allow a 16-year-old to drive a Honda Accord, which weighs approximately 3,400 pounds, with no background check. But people are complaining that they want background checks on firearms. Again, there is no Nevada constitutional provision or statutory provision guaranteeing the right to drive a car. Next statistic. HIV. The deaths in the United States are over 15,000 each year. That's more than all the people killed with firearms. There are 36,400 new HIV infections occur in the United States each year. Entirely preventable deaths. Entirely preventable disease. Next slide, please. Now, firearms deaths are not all due to murder, per the Centers for Disease Control. Firearm homicides in the United States averages 14,000, which includes murder, suicide, and accidental death. We need a point of clarification. Every time we hear a Nevada legislator say, oh, the homicide rate is up. Homicide, homicide, homicide. Well, a homicide is the death of a human being. The manner of death could be gunshot, suicide, car wreck. It's still a homicide. Now, let's have the next slide, please. At the gun show this past week, well, actually 10 days ago, here in Las Vegas, I had an informal survey going at the gun show, and it was consistent with my informal survey before the gun show, and that's this: that only one person, and that was a gun dealer, knew about Assembly Bill 286, which, as of the broadcast time today, could very well be passed. Assembly Bill 286 contains some very specific provisions on ghost guns. Now, it's agreeable that some ghost guns do cause deaths. The majority of those do not, because those people who have fabricated their own firearms as permitted by federal law, most of those people don't use the ghost guns in homicides, to use the terms of the Nevada Assembly. Now, if we look at Assembly Bill 286, subsection 3, which states, a person shall not possess, sell, offer to sell, transfer, purchase, or transport or receive an unfinished frame or receiver unless, two things: the person is a firearms manufacturer or importer, or the unfinished frame or receiver is required by federal law to be imprinted with the serial number issued by an importer or a manufacturer, and the unfinished frame or receiver has been imprinted with the serial number. Two elements: the unfinished frame or receiver is required by federal law, and the receiver has been imprinted. Guess what? Current federal law does not require the imprinting of a serial number on a firearm which you manufacture for yourself, providing that the firearm is legal. A pistol, a 9mm, a .45, a .40 caliber, an AR-15, a .50 caliber Beowulf on an AR frame are perfectly legal under federal law. So if we look at this bill, you can't possess it unless you're a firearms importer, or in the disjunctive, or the receiver is required to be imprinted by federal law. So if right now, current owners win on this issue, unless they try to modify this somehow in the next few days after they see this broadcast. Now, if we look on this in this same Assembly bill, and we're looking at subsection 4, is that you shall not manufacture or cause to be manufactured a firearm without a serial number. The problem with this particular law is that it violates two constitutional provisions. First is what's known as the ex post facto law. An ex post facto law under the U.S. Constitution is a prohibition for the enactment of a law which criminalizes behavior today, which wasn't a crime yesterday, and it's continuing. For example, I'm selling tires, and all of a sudden, somebody in Congress says, we're going to regulate tires even more. And you have to have a background check, and you can only buy tires from certain dealers. That would be an ex post facto law. And the next point, a bill of attainder. It is specific that in the U.S. Constitution, which limits very little power on Congress, the habeas corpus statute, which cannot be suspended except sometimes of war and insurrection, an ex post facto law, which means you can't criminalize behavior today, which wasn't a crime yesterday, and a bill of attainder. A bill of attainder is a bill which is specifically targeting a person or a number of persons. And who is it targeting? Legal firearms owners. So you have to contact your legislatures almost immediately and tell them that you don't want them to pass this bill. Your request will probably fall on deaf ears. How do I know that? In this bill, there are like 40 or 50 pages of emails from people saying that it violates the Second Amendment. Well, that's where they're wrong. They need to stop focusing on the Second Amendment and focus on the Nevada Constitution, which specifically and clearly allows Nevadans to own firearms. And it is infinitely more clear than the Second Amendment in the Constitution of the United States. Plus, we have a series of Nevada statutes which guarantee the right to possess legal firearms, including the Nevada background check law, which became effective on January 1st, 2020. I argued to the Nevada Joint Judiciary and Assembly Committees that they needed to put a provision in the background check law guaranteeing the right to possess firearms. So, here's the problem. If that statute survives, that is the background check, does it not conflict with the present attempt to regulate these types of firearms by canceling them out completely? I would say the answer is yes. So instead of you're sending an email to your legislator talking about the Second Amendment, change your email to the Nevada Constitution and the Nevada statutes. Let's have the next slide, please. Over the weekend, week before last at the gun show, and again on my informal survey prior to the gun show, we'll discuss the gun show in a moment, I talked about the new Senate bill to ban assault rifles. And this is a very comprehensive bill, which is a repeat of the bill proposed in the year 2016, but then when Trump became president and the Senate and the House of Representatives were controlled by Republicans. I think people have forgotten that the first 2 years of the Trump administration, both the Senate and the House of Representatives were controlled by Republicans, but yet we didn't see a lot of the legislation which was actually going to go through, and fortunately the Senate didn't allow some of these gun bills to go through, but now they have all the power. So now in 2021, the Senate, controlled by the Democrats, actually it's 50-50, but by Constitution, if it's 50-50, Kamala Harris gets the tie vote, and it's already you can take it to the bank which way she's going to vote. She's never going to vote with the Republicans, pure and simple. And the House of Representatives is now still controlled by the Republicans. But in this bill, you have to contact your representatives to keep the bill as it is and stop arguing that it violates the Second Amendment. That's something that will eventually get to the Supreme Court. And why do I say that? Because the bill starts off by saying that we need to ensure that the right to bear arms is not unlimited. Well, wait, just a minute. Read that. To ensure that the right to keep and bear arms is not unlimited. Well, wait a minute. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution is the only amendment which protects a specific property right. Let me repeat that. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States is the only amendment and only constitutional provision which protects a specific property right, and that is firearms. And at the last sentence of the Second Amendment, it says, shall not be infringed. Shall is mandatory. What they're trying to do is they're changing the Second Amendment by legislation, which cannot be done. The Second Amendment can only be changed by a constitutional convention requiring the votes of 2/3 of the states, or, very rarely, by the Convention of States, which would mean that 3/4 of the states decide that they want to change the U.S. Constitution. It's been very rare that there has been a Convention of States. And you're not going to get states like Texas and Missouri and Arkansas and Alabama, maybe not so much Georgia anymore. They're not going to vote for this. So, if we look at this bill, and you can find this on my website, and you can find the phone numbers to your assembly members and your senators on my website. If we look at this on page 16, literally buried inside of this law, and the bill is over 127 pages long. It took me 4 hours to read it. And you know that the people in Congress are not reading it. But Section 3, page 16, says, quote, "It shall be unlawful for any person to import, sell, manufacture, transfer, or possess in or affecting interstate or foreign commerce a semi-automatic assault weapon." Subsection 2, paragraph 1 shall not apply to the possession, sale, transfer of any semi-automatic weapon or otherwise lawfully possessed under federal law on the date of the enactment of the assault weapons ban of 2021. Basically, if you own the assault weapon on or before the effective date of the statute in the federal statute, you are A-OK to own it, assuming that you're already legal to own it. So you need to contact your representative in Congress, your senator, Catherine Cortez Masto, and Senator Rosen, and tell her, yeah, I want that in there. I want this to stay. Don't change it. Because if they get the idea that they're not allowing you to that they're allowing you to have it, they'll do something to change it. But I think the Supreme Court's going to take care of that for us, regardless of the composition of the Supreme Court. Because remember, everybody was talking about, Saint Ginsburg, the late saint. I say that saint because they practically promoted her to sainthood. But she has a decision in United States versus Hernandez, I believe it's about 10, 12 years ago. And in there, she said that citizens have the right to keep and bear arms, even if it's concealed. And that decision has been buried. Call my office, I'll give you the citation. Now, if we look on page 17 of the current Senate bill, the assault weapons ban bill, on page 17, paragraph 4 says, paragraph 1 shall not apply to, and these are for magazines, subsection E, the importation, sale, manufacture, transfer, or possession of a firearm, specifically in Appendix A, as such firearm was manufactured on the date of the introduction of the assault weapons ban. Introduction of the bill, not its passage. But if you look at page 20 now, it says that it shall be unlawful for a person to import, sell, manufacture, transfer, or possess in or affecting interstate or foreign commerce a large capacity ammunition feeding device. Oh no, they're getting rid of our magazines. No, read the next section. Paragraph 1 shall not apply to the possession of any large capacity ammunition feeding device otherwise lawfully possessed on or before the date of the enactment of the assault weapons ban of 2021. This is completely consistent with the decision of Judge Benitez now in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, where he declared that the California's magazine ban was unconstitutional because it violated provisions of the Second Amendment. Now you're saying, well, Mr. Green, why are you mentioning the Second Amendment now? Because Judge Benitez sits as a federal judge in San Diego, California. He was appointed by President Bush. Now, Judge Benitez had to rely on the Second Amendment because in California, there is no equivalent of the Second Amendment in the California Constitution. Let me repeat that. There is no equivalent of the Second Amendment in the California Constitution. Ever since California became a state in 1849, it's never been there. And probably won't be in our lifetimes. But Judge Benitez had the foresight in his brilliantly written decision, which went up on appeal after the injunction was granted, and the Ninth Circuit panel agreed with Judge Benitez. Now it's gone to trial. Now it's probably going to go back up to the Ninth Circuit, where they're probably going to ask all of the judges of the Ninth Circuit to take a look at it. But someone in Congress had the foresight to put this provision that the ownership of a large capacity feeding device, aka magazine, is legal if it was lawfully possessed on or before the effective date of the assault weapons ban of 2021. So you need to get a hold of Senator Cortez Castro, pardon me. You need to get a hold of Senator Rosen, and you need to get a hold of your House of Representatives congressperson in your district and tell them, yeah, leave the bill as is. Let it pass. Because the Supreme Court may strike down part of it, but as to these provisions which are consistent with the law and consistent with the property ownership provision of a firearm in the Second Amendment, I think that the Supreme Court has a good chance to review this case very soon. May we have the next slide, please? Now, last year at this time, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, people were fighting in the streets for toilet paper. People were scrambling for water. Grocery stores, Walmart, Costco were limiting the number of cases of water which you could get. And the governor issued a complete shutdown of the state of Nevada, except for essential services. And one of my clients called me and says, Mr. Green, what do we do about this? And I said that the governor of the state of Nevada cannot shut down a gun store. He cannot shut down any store related to firearms and the transfer or the sale or repair of any firearms or ammunition. And my client says, well, what do you mean? I said, there is a specific Nevada law in Chapter 433 in the Emergency Powers Act. How do I know that? Because in 2005, 2006, I had contacted my assembly person, and I told him about what was going on in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And during Hurricane Katrina, the police were willy-nilly going into houses and taking guns. I said, we can't have that if we have an emergency in Nevada. And several assembly people, several senators said, we need to put that in the Emergency Powers Act for Nevada. And it's in there. And for 13 years, nothing had ever happened with that Emergency Act until March of 2020. So I told my client X and client Y, because I didn't want to use their names, and we fired off emails and letters to the governor of the state of Nevada, the attorney general, the sheriff of Clark County, Nevada, city of Henderson, city of Las Vegas, and told them, you can't close gun stores. You can't close gun sales. Period. Shall not. Mandatory. In fact, Sheriff Lombardo, a couple of weeks later, towards the end of March or April, someone asked him, what about the closure of, can we keep gun stores open? He said, they're going to stay open. Chapter 433 takes care of that. Next question. End of story. Why am I bringing this up a year later? Because before the Nevada Assembly and the Senate, and you need to get a hold of your senators and your assembly persons, their phone number is on my website. We'll give that to you in a minute. They want to strike out the exception for gun stores, gun dealers, sales of firearms, and sales of ammunition. They want to strike that from the Emergency Powers Act. Why? Well, wait a minute. Who's behind this? We have the slide, please. Okay. It's been the law since 2007. And some assembly members actually voted on that law. They voted to keep it. Now they're voting to ban it. So what has changed? The only thing that's changed is they're politically motivated by big money and big interests. And remember, Michael Bloomberg lost millions of dollars in the 2016 election when he was trying to get Proposition 1 passed for the background check. And that law was struck down by the FBI, says you can't do whatever, you can't tell us what to do. And I got it struck down, not on Second Amendment, not on gun rights, but on taxation. That it impermissibly created a tax which was not collected, which is in violation of a different provision of the Nevada Revised Statutes. So, who's behind this? Some of the same people who voted for these protections for gun stores and gun dealers are now voting against it. Why? It's either because they want to be or seem to be politically correct, or on the other hand, they want to show that we're going to buddy up to the Biden administration, the Harris administration, and we're going to butter up to all these political interests, and we're going to become East California, in the words of many people at the gun show. Well, are we getting political? Yes, because this is a political hot potato. It's a political hot potato. And someone's got to take responsibility. And it is the duty of the citizenry. It is the duty of the viewing audience. It is the duty of the people listening to this program to get out and get off your rear ends and start to act. Money talks and you know what walks. And just like the election in 2020, when people were asking me what happened, I told them the same thing in 2018 when the House of Representatives became Republican again. I said, you guys are sitting around the coffee shops talking and not enough acting. And they said, we don't have enough money. I said, you don't need money. What you need to do is get on the internet, form a blog, and talk to people and walk the street in your neighborhood right before the election, if it's legitimate and if it's legal. Don't do anything that's not illegal, and don't do it in the middle of the night. So, and get the word out. Now, in getting the word out, 10 days ago, there was a gun show in Las Vegas at the Alexis Park. A very successful gun show. A small venue, but it was perfect. There hadn't been a gun show in over a year. And their estimates were 1,500 people attended on Saturday alone. My assistants who were with me went out and counted 400 people plus in line. The gun show administrators were allowing 175 people in at the beginning of the show, and then as people left, they would let someone in. For example, 3 people come out, 3 people were getting let in. And by the afternoon, the wait was a lot less, maybe 10 minutes. Sunday, I would say between 700 and 800 people attended the show. Again, a long wait, 2+ hours. But many of the people who were going there were very glad that there was a gun show. But only one person knew about some of the bills we were talking about today. And they were surprised. I hadn't seen it in the newspaper. Well, I wonder why. I hadn't heard it on the radio. Well, I wonder why. I hadn't seen it on TV. I wonder why. Who owns these media? Who owns this media? And as George Orwell said in the book 1984, who controls the present controls the past. Who controls the past controls the future. And Marshall McLuhan, who invented the word media in the 50s, said, the medium is the message. And who controls the media controls the message. So get the message out. You're welcome to call my office. Look on the website, and that information will be provided to you. There's a gun show coming up in May at Western Trails at Alexis Park. I encourage you to go there. Again, if you are authorized to own a firearm, you need to make sure that you take care of your firearms. Remember, we have a new law which requires safe storage of the firearms. Don't let the kids, don't let your children see the firearm. Don't lend your firearms out. Don't tell anybody you have firearms. And have a blessed day. Welcome to call me. Again, it's Don Green, 702-409-8239. Thank you.